Well, some of you, like me, are regrouping and reclaiming spaces with children back at school today. I do miss them. I missed them before they left. My guest has spent years reaching out to high school students as Associate National Director of Student Venture, now as a global ambassador. Nancy Wilson is a spokesperson for StoryRunners. Doesn't that sound cool? We're going to hear more about what that represents, and I can't help but think what a fitting investment of your MA in Leadership and Communications. Nancy, welcome from Orlando.
Oh, thank you, Moira. It is such a pleasure to be here. I love it.
35 years with Campus.
It's hard to believe. It really is, but it's been awesome. It's been such an honor.
Campus Crusade for Christ International, still the banner.
Yes.
And I understand that all these new names we're hearing, Power to Change, Crew, you've thrown some others at me. They pop up all over the world with different nomenclature.
Absolutely. The heart of our movement is to reach out to the lost and to reach people that maybe wouldn't understand how to connect with God. And so in order to do that, some of the countries will choose a name that will be better for their target audience. And so we all have that umbrella of Campus Crusade for Christ, but the unique ministries can choose what banner they want to go under.
And just while we're talking about the ministry as a whole, we were celebrating the Jesus film.
Yes.
We have seen one time earlier on the program, the new project. I'm just going to show this because this will go global.
Oh, it already has. It's amazing.
Magdalena.
Yes.
Mary Magdalene.
Yes.
Wow.
It's basically the stories of Jesus' encounters with women as told through the eyes of Mary Magdalene. So it's just like the Jesus film. You'll see the whole story of Jesus, but the unique ways that Jesus reached out to women. And it is so powerful, in particular in countries that are maybe Muslim, where they maybe don't know who their prophet Isa is and how much he loved women.
What a great woman to choose.
Oh,
talk about power to change.
Yes, yes. She has a changed life.
I just have to ask how you moved from being a dolphin trainer to a story wave evangelist.
Oh, well, you know, God has story. I tell you, I think that he doesn't waste anything. And when I look back at my life, I see how every part of my journey until the wonderful day when I was 19 years old that I met Jesus personally. He even used my dolphin training to prepare me to speak in front of audiences, to trust him, and it was fun.
We're going to come back to your story, but really, this is one of your 4 or 5 books, Chosen with a Mission. Are you ready for the adventure? This is really your story. You have been a woman on a mission for a long time, and story wave evangelism. Tell us what you do.
Well, I love the story of God's eternal love story. You know, when he captured my life, I knew for many years about him. But when I came to experience that intimate personal love, I got a vision. And the vision was that God had a purpose for my life and that he had actually handcrafted and created me that way. And so I think that so much of our lives is a story. And we have a story, but God has a bigger story and we get to fit into it. So as I've seen the stories in his word that are so powerful, Jesus encountered people at the point of need. He did miracles. He healed the dead. You know, he did amazing things. And so a lot of people don't know these stories. So God began to show me that just as I'm a communicator and I love to tell stories to connect with people's hearts, how about bringing to life his story? And so the overarching ministry of StoryRunners, that is what we do. We go to even the very unreached people groups of the world and give them an oral Bible, which is a chronological set of Bible stories that opens their heart to understand who Jesus is. But then there's many people that are just preferred oral learners, such as the postmodern generation, and they relate through story.
And those unreached people are both in people groups and in high schools right here in the West. We have you globe-trotting. Let's go first to Africa, and I think Kenya is where we find you first in this photograph.
Well, there I am in a high school in Kenya.
Rose in hand.
Yes, I'm actually teaching the students there about moral purity and about the fact that they can protect their virginity. Now, here is after a classroom assembly in Tanzania. And many of the schools there are mixed with Muslims and other students. And I was able to share the gospel using the stories. Now we flipped right on over to the Congo. And these are some women that I was ministering with in the Congo, helping to train them in the Bible stories for women so that they can reach their friends. And this is now in Turkey. Now, I am dressed as a Turkish bride. I don't have the headpiece on right here, but I did a retreat on being the bride of Christ.
And you really have the freedom to gather these women and
this
present?
was a group of about 300 women leaders that came out to a little village for a retreat center, and they wanted to learn about the bride of Christ. They endure a lot of persecution being believers in that country. And this is an amazing story. The woman I'm beside is actually a gypsy Muslim woman who, through the story of the woman bleeding for 12 years because she told me she had been bleeding for 12 years. Oh. And I almost got excited.
I've got a story.
I've got a story for you. And through my translator, I told her the story, and she came to the Lord. And that was while I was at the retreat. And the women were so encouraged because, you know, they need to know that they can reach their women because the hearts of all women are the same. And when they encounter Jesus and his amazing love and compassion, many of them are open to the gospel.
And in so many of these countries, women are subjugated and oppressed and not valued. I can't believe we only have 7 minutes left. I want to show you this, The King and I.
Oh.
This is one of your books, an intimate love song to the nations. And this is what you're doing as you travel.
And that has a worship CD with it.
I see that. Now, I want to come back to this book that I started with because this really focuses so much on your personal story.
Yeah,
I didn't know Barbie, and you've got study stats in here. I guess she comes up on top still?
She's still very famous, you know, around the world. This book is actually in Arabic and Turkish as well.
Wow.
And you can't even imagine
with those legs hanging out there?
Well, I tried to convince them to change it in Turkey. They did. They changed the cover.
Okay.
But in Arabic, they have Barbie on the cover, although she is an Arabic Barbie. She's a little darker.
Now, speaking, I'm just going to give a little highlight from another book here, where it takes us back a few years.
Yes.
You say, once when I was on the high school basketball cheerleading squad, which was a very important thing to attain for you then, I saw a cute guy up in the bleachers, completely distracted. I was watching him instead of the game. I started jumping around and cheering when I heard that a basket was scored. I was kicking my legs up and doing my best to impress that guy. Unfortunately, the other team had made the shot, and like a fool, I had been rooting for the opponent. This is just a fun highlight from the performance track that represents a huge chunk of your early life.
And I want to be real about that because I think the reason that I love Jesus the way I do today is because of what he rescued me from. And I put on a great external, you know, performance. And that was what happened in my life. I had a wonderful family. I was raised in a religious home. But I think I tried to define myself by what was on the outside, others' approval, even God's approval. I didn't understand his unconditional love or a personal love relationship with him. So I tried to do everything to gain that popularity. That I even used my story together with the woman at the well as she was seeking for these different ways, you know, to find that water to quench her thirst. I tried popularity, I tried significance, I tried everything.
Eating disorder.
Eating disorder is what happened. What I began to do was stuff down my emotions because I was voted the friendliest girl in the school, student, but everything looked great on the outside. Performing for my father's approval, which is something that many women grapple with.
Now, your earthly father's
my earthly father are looking for the approval of a guy. So these things began to entrap me, and through this stuffing down my emotions through the eating disorder, I managed to submerge it for a while. But God intervened, and at the very end of my rope, when I had begun drinking too much as well, as a little party girl in college, I met Jesus. And that story's in the books. I don't have time to tell it all, but it was a supernatural because of how I cried out to him at my point of desperation. And I know that many are in some point of desperation. And as I travel the world, I see that the hearts of women and people of all ages are basically crying out for that unconditional love and acceptance and sense of identity. Who am I and why do I matter? And that's really why the Lord birthed in me to put these out there, to share that there is freedom. You can find your identity, and it's found not in what everybody else thinks, but it's found in the mirror of God's Word and His truth and how He sees us. So I absolutely love to communicate those truths everywhere I go.
Thrilling to read that your decision to trust Christ and let Him do that renewing in your life impacted your whole family.
Oh, yes.
It's so nice when
it's a miracle. They're all so precious, and they all love Jesus, and now I've got all my little nieces and nephews. 2 of them are going with me to Africa this summer. Yes, and that's a big answer to prayer.
Now, Angel, a woman you met in Africa,
Angel
was concerned about you not having a husband. You've
Yes.
never been married, Nancy. And I'm not sure if she was actually offering her husband. I'm not quite sure how that played out.
That
But,
was amazing. Yes.
What did you say to her, and what do you say to women who might be just pining, lonely
Yes.
today, wondering when Mr. Right will come along?
Good question. And Angel was a princess who I met in Swaziland, and she and I connected very well. And right now her husband only had 1 wife. So she liked me, so she wanted me in the harem with her.
Oh, you could join the family.
So she felt sorry for me that I didn't have a husband, so she offered me, would I marry hers? I said, well, Angel, actually, I don't have a husband, but I do have a prince. And he is so awesome. Can I tell you about him? And I went on and described, he's just so generous, he's gracious, he accepts me just the way I am, he loves me, he's, oh my gosh. And I couldn't say enough. And she's looking at me, I said, do you want to meet him? She said, yes. I said, well, his name is Jesus. And to make a long story short, I was able to introduce Angel to her prince of all princes that day. But I would say that being single has its wonderful blessings. But I know, as many women are listening, that sometimes there's a heart longing for someone with skin and bones. But what I have found is that if I let Jesus be that husband to me and invite him into those places of intimacy, he is so precious to me. I can say that my husband runs the universe and I get to go with him. But he also meets me in those secret places when he understands my heart and my need like no one else. And that has been a joy for me because I feel that through my singleness, at times I've been able to identify with people who have certain longings. A while back, when God was really working that calling into my life, he challenged me with the thought, what would it be like if I taught you how to live with an unfulfilled desire and to trust me that I will be what you need? Mm-hmm. And so now my friends call me Paulette because I have embraced that calling. And Apostle Paul, you know. So
I get it.
I have the privilege. You know, there are advantages to being single. And so many times I think women or men get hung up focusing on what they're missing rather than, oh, I've got this freedom. You know, I get up in the morning and I say, Lord, we're having time together. I don't have to have any children that need breakfast. I do have my spiritual children, though.
Yes.
And they're around the
and you've
world.
got a whole wish
I
list time.
do. We don't have time
whole
for that. Oh.
photo album of
Yes.
people around the world who look to you for encouragement and love and mentoring. And it's a great life. It's an adventure.
It is.
58 countries, I'm sure more waiting for you, Nancy. I'm so glad you came.
Oh, Moira,
today.
this has been my privilege, and I love it. And if anybody wants to learn more about how to effectively engage people, this StoryRunners training is very powerful because we all have a story. And if we can learn to combine our story with his story.
And the www.nancywilson.org for her books, for more about StoryRunners and the whole story wave. And if you're living with an unmet longing and it's really tugging at you today, maybe you'd just like to call our prayer line and have someone pray with you. You could get as excited as this woman. It's a true story. Don't go away. We'll be back.